My hands weren't shaking. I reached into my worn leather briefcase and pulled out a single manila folder. The room had gone quiet after Thomas Bradford's speech, where he'd spent 5 minutes explaining to everyone at the engagement party why his daughter Amanda was marrying down. I stood slowly, the chair scraping against the polished wood floor. My son Michael's face went pale. He knew that look, that calm I got when I'd made a decision that couldn't be unmade. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up 6 months, to the day Michael first introduced me to Amanda. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle. I'd come straight from my morning rounds at the Westlake building, still wearing my Navy maintenance uniform, with Chen stitched on the pocket. I'd been checking the HVAC systems on the 14th floor when Michael texted that he wanted me to meet someone special. Amanda was lovely, genuinely lovely. She had her mother's warmth, I'd learn later, and thankfully not her father's disposition. She smiled when she shook my hand, didn't even glance at my uniform. "Dad works hard," Michael said, and there was something in his voice. Pride, maybe, or was it defensiveness? I couldn't tell yet. "That's wonderful," Amanda said. "Michael told me you've worked in buildings downtown for over 30 years. 32 years, I said, stirring my black coffee. Started when I was 30. Came here from San Francisco. We talked for an hour. She asked good questions, listened to the answers. When her phone buzzed with a call from Dad, she excused herself to take it outside. Through the window, I watched her expression change. The smile faded. She kept glancing back at us through the glass. When she returned, something had shifted. "My father wants to meet you both," she said to Michael. "He's insisting on dinner this weekend. He has a reservation at Canlis." Michael whistled low. Canlis was the kind of restaurant where reservations were made months in advance, where a single meal could cost what some people made in a week. "I don't have anything appropriate to wear to a place like that," I said. "You're fine as you are," Amanda said, but her eyes said something else. They said, "Please don't be yourself. Please be more." That Saturday, I wore my only suit. It was 15 years old, bought for my wife Patricia's funeral. The shoulders were a bit tight now, the style dated. Michael wore a sharp navy blazer I'd never seen before. "Let me guess," I said as we drove. "Amanda bought you that." He shifted uncomfortably. "She wanted me to look good for her parents. And I make you look bad?" "Dad, don't. I'm not upset, son. I'm just clarifying." Canlis overlooked Lake Union. All glass walls and soft lighting. The kind of place where the waiters moved like dancers and knew your name before you opened your mouth. Thomas Bradford was already seated when we arrived, his wife Margaret beside him. Thomas looked exactly how I'd pictured. Tall, silver-haired, expensive watch, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Robert Chen," he said, not standing, not extending his hand. "Amanda's told us about you. Good to meet you both." I sat down, trying not to wince, as the suit jacket pulled across my shoulders. Margaret was kinder, asking gentle questions about my work, my life. Thomas interrupted her constantly. "So, maintenance work," Thomas said, swirling his wine. "That's quite physical, isn't it? Don't they usually retire people from that kind of labor by your age?" "I stay active," I said. "How much longer do you think you can keep working? 5 years? 10? Michael's jaw tightened. "Dad's in great shape." "I'm sure he is." Thomas cut him off. "I'm just thinking practically. When you and Amanda start having children, Michael, you'll want to focus on your career. Can't have you worrying about supporting your father, too." The words hung there. Supporting me. As if I were a burden waiting to happen. "I manage fine," I said evenly. "For now. But real estate in Seattle, the cost of living, it's not like the old days. You must rent. A maintenance salary wouldn't cover a mortgage in this market." I took a sip of water. "I get by." "Well," Thomas sat back, satisfied. "That's what family is for, isn't it? Michael's doing well at his firm, top performer. He'll be making partner in a few years. Won't you, son?" Michael looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "We don't know that yet." "Of course you will. You're a Bradford now, or will be, once the wedding happens." Thomas turned to me. "You know, Robert, in my family, we have a tradition. The bride's father gives the couple their first home as a wedding gift. A real one, not some starter condo. I've already had my eye on a place in Madison Park. 4 bedrooms, 2,000,008. Margaret touched his arm. Thomas, maybe this isn't... What? I'm just being honest. Can't have them living in some apartment while they're starting their lives together. What would people think? What would people think? The words echoed in my head as I cut my $60 steak. The dinner went on like that. Thomas praising his own success, his firm, his properties, his legacy, asking me pointed questions about my retirement plans and whether I had any savings set aside. Each question designed to expose, to diminish, to remind me of my place. Michael drove me home afterward in silence. When he pulled up to my small house in Rainier Valley, he finally spoke. I'm sorry. For what? For him? For all of it. I looked at my son's profile in the dim light from the street lamp. He'd inherited his mother's sharp mind, her determination. But Patricia had also taught him something I'd forgotten to emphasize. Dignity didn't require an audience. Do you love her? I asked. Yes. Then that's all that matters. Her father's approval is her burden to carry, not yours. But I was wrong about that. Over the next few months, I saw Amanda and her family regularly. Thomas made sure of it. He'd call Michael with invitations to events, dinners, gatherings, always at expensive venues, always with the underlying message, this is the world my daughter comes from. Can you really provide this? And I watched my son change. Slowly at first, he started dressing differently, wearing designer labels I knew he couldn't afford. He traded his reliable Honda for a leased BMW. When I asked about it, he said Amanda's family expected a certain image. Whose image? I asked. Yours or theirs? He didn't answer. The engagement happened in March at a Seahawks game. Thomas had suite tickets, naturally. He made a big show of it, announcing it on the Jumbotron. Michael looked happy, genuinely happy, and that was enough for me. But then came the planning for the engagement party. Dad, Michael said over coffee one morning, about the party. Amanda's father is hosting it at El Gaucho. He's inviting some important people, business associates, family, friends. Sounds nice. The thing is, he wouldn't meet my eyes. He's asking that you maybe don't mention what you do, for work. I set down my cup carefully. What should I say I do? Just keep it vague. Say you work in property management. That's technically true, right? You manage buildings. I maintain them. There's a difference. Dad, please. This is important to Amanda. Is it? Or is it important to her father? He stood up, frustrated. Why do you have to make everything difficult? Can't you just play along for one night? Play along at being ashamed of honest work? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Michael? He left without answering. The engagement party was set for the first Saturday in April. El Gaucho's private dining room, 75 guests, dinner and speeches. Thomas had insisted on handling everything, which meant I wasn't involved in any of the planning. Margaret called once to ask if I had any dietary restrictions, her voice apologetic. That was the extent of my contribution. I thought about not going, seriously considered it, but Amanda came to see me the week before, and that changed my mind. She knocked on my door on a Tuesday evening, alone. Hi, Mr. Chen. Can we talk? I made tea. We sat in my small living room, where the furniture was old but comfortable, where Patricia's paintings still hung on the walls. I need to apologize, she said, for my father, for how he's been treating you. You're not responsible for him. I know, but I've been letting it happen. I should have stood up to him more. It's just, he's always been like this, judgmental, convinced his way is the only way. My whole life, I've been trying to prove I'm worthy of his approval. And Michael? She looked at her hands. Michael's caught in the middle. My dad keeps comparing him to the other partners at his firm, asking when he'll make more money, suggesting he should be more aggressive in his career. And Michael, he's trying so hard to measure up. To what? To some impossible standard my father invented. She met my eyes. I love your son, Mr. Chen. I love that he's kind and thoughtful and doesn't measure people by their bank accounts. But I'm afraid my father is changing him. What do you want me to do about it? I want you to come to the party. I want you to be yourself. Because someone needs to show my father that success isn't just about money and status. And maybe, she smiled sadly, maybe Michael needs to remember who taught him his values in the first place. So I went. I wore the same old suit. I drove my 15-year-old truck and parked it next to the row of Mercedes and BMWs outside El Gaucho. The valet looked at it like it was a relic from another era, which, I suppose, it was. The private dining room was elegant. Dark wood, soft lighting, white tablecloths, 75 people in cocktail attire, drinking expensive wine and making expensive conversation. I recognized some faces from previous gatherings, but mostly these were Thomas's people, his partners from the law firm, his country club friends, his social circle. Michael found me immediately. "Dad, you came." Of course I came. "Listen, about what I said before. We'll talk later." I nodded toward Amanda, who was being photographed with her mother. "Go be with your fiancé. This is her night." He hesitated, then left. I found a spot near the back, trying to be unobtrusive. I watched Thomas work the room, all confidence and charm, introducing Amanda to important people, emphasizing her pedigree, her education, her prospects. Margaret found me eventually. "Robert, I'm glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it. I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to talk more. Thomas keeps such a busy schedule." "It's fine, Margaret. Really." She looked like she wanted to say something else, but Thomas appeared, guiding her away with a hand on her elbow. He didn't acknowledge me. Dinner was served. I was seated at a table near the back, with people I didn't know. They were polite enough, asking the standard questions. "Where do you live? What do you do?" I kept my answers vague, like Michael had asked. "Property management, downtown, long time." After dinner, the speeches began. Amanda's college roommate told funny stories. One of Michael's friends from work raised a toast. Then Thomas stood up. "My turn," he said, and the room settled. He talked about Amanda, about watching her grow up, about being proud of the woman she'd become. It was sweet, genuine even. Then his gaze swept the room and landed on Michael. "And now she's chosen a partner. A good man, I'm told." There was a ripple of laughter. "Michael works at Stratton and Delaney, a solid firm. He's ambitious. He's eager to succeed. And that's important, because in this world, you need to have drive. You need to want more." I felt it shifting, the tone changing. "My daughter deserves the best," Thomas continued. "She comes from a family that's built something. My father was a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. We have a legacy of success, of achievement. And when Amanda marries, she needs to know she's not stepping down. She's not compromising." Michael's face had gone red. People were looking uncomfortable now, shifting in their seats. "Now, I know some people think love is enough. That's very romantic, very idealistic." Thomas smiled, but it was sharp. "But I'm a practical man. I believe in foundations, financial stability, social standing. And frankly, when I look at Michael's family situation," he paused, letting it hang there, letting everyone wonder what he meant. "When I look at where Michael comes from, I see some concerns. His father, for instance. Robert." He gestured vaguely toward the back. "Nice man, I'm sure. Works with his hands. Maintenance, buildings, that sort of thing. Salt of the earth, we call it." The room was completely silent now. But let's be honest. That's not exactly the foundation we'd hoped for. Amanda's children will be Bradford's first. They'll be educated at the best schools. They'll join the right clubs. They'll inherit something meaningful. Not just, he waved his hand dismissively, work ethic, or whatever else gets passed down from manual labor. I saw Michael start to stand. Saw Amanda reach for his arm. But I was already moving. I walked slowly toward the front of the room. Every eye followed me. Thomas frowned, clearly not expecting this interruption. "Robert, I'm in the middle of—" "I know," I said quietly, "but I think I should say something. This isn't really the time." "It's exactly the time." I reached into my briefcase, the worn leather one I'd carried for decades, and pulled out the manila folder. Thomas's expression shifted. For the first time that evening, he looked uncertain. You've spent the last few months, I said, my voice carrying in the quiet room, making assumptions about me, about what I do, about what I'm worth, and I let you. Partly because I wanted to see who my son was marrying. Partly because I wanted to see if Michael would stand up for me, or if he'd let someone else define his father's value. I opened the folder. Inside were property deeds, tax documents, corporate filings. My name is Robert Chen. I do work in buildings downtown. Have for 32 years. But I don't maintain them, Thomas. I own them. His face went white. I own the Westlake building, where your law firm leases the entire 14th floor. I own the Columbia Center, where 3 of your partners have their offices. I own the Pacific Place shopping complex, where your wife shops every Saturday. I pulled out another document. And I own this building. El Gaucho operates here under a 15-year lease. With me. Someone gasped. The room erupted in whispers. I wear a maintenance uniform, I continued, because I like to personally inspect my properties. I drive an old truck because it's reliable, and I don't believe in waste. I live in a small house in Rainier Valley because my wife and I bought it 40 years ago and I'm not interested in moving. I turned to face the room, not just Thomas. I came to this country with $200 and a work ethic. I took night classes while working 3 jobs. I bought my first building at 32, a rundown apartment complex nobody wanted. I fixed it myself, learned everything, saved every penny, and I built an empire one building at a time. My portfolio is currently valued at $420 million. The silence was absolute. I looked at Thomas. You talk about legacy, about what gets passed down. I'm passing down to Michael the understanding that wealth without humility is just money, that success without character is just luck, and that a man's worth isn't determined by how much he has, but by how he treats people who can do nothing for him. I turned to Michael. My son's eyes were bright with tears. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. Your mother and I decided long ago to raise you normally, without the burden of wealth. We wanted you to work for what you have, to understand value, and you've done that. You've become a good man, a man I'm proud of. Then I looked at Amanda. You deserve a partner who values you for who you are, not what your family provides. I hope Michael is that man. But if your father's approval is a requirement for your happiness, then maybe this isn't the right match. I placed the folder on the table in front of Thomas. One more thing. Michael's lease on that BMW? I paid it off yesterday. Consider it an early wedding gift. Not because he needs it, but because I don't want him sacrificing his financial security to impress people who judge him by his car. I walked out. Didn't wait for responses, didn't look back. I'd said what needed saying. The next 48 hours were chaos. My phone didn't stop ringing. Michael called 17 times before I finally answered. Amanda called. Margaret called. Even some of the guests from the party called, presumably having gotten my number from others. But the most important call came from Thomas's law firm. His senior partner, Graham Straighton, called me personally. Mr. Chen, I just became aware of an uncomfortable situation. Thomas Bradford made some disparaging comments about you at a private event. He did. I need you to understand that Bradford and Associates operates on your property under a lease agreement that comes up for renewal in 6 months. Thomas is a partner here, but he doesn't speak for the firm. We value our relationship with you and would be devastated to lose our offices. Are you asking me not to terminate the lease? A pause. I'm asking what it would take to make this right. Nothing. Your lease is solid and fair. I honor my agreements. Even after what happened? Thomas embarrassed himself. Not me. His behavior is between him and his conscience. Another pause. You're a better man than most, Mr. Chen. After I hung up, Michael arrived at my door. He looked like he hadn't slept. Dad, come in. We sat in the living room, the same place I'd sat with Amanda weeks before. I'm sorry, he said finally, for asking you to hide who you are, for letting Thomas talk to you that way, he shook his head, for forgetting everything you taught me. And what did I teach you? That money is a tool, not a trophy. That respect is earned through character, not bank statements. That the measure of a man is how he treats people when nobody's watching. Good. You remember. Why didn't you tell me? About the buildings, the money, all of it? Would it have changed anything? He thought about it. No. Yes. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have felt so inferior around Thomas. That's exactly why I didn't tell you. I didn't want you using my wealth as a shield. I wanted you to build your own confidence, your own identity, not hide behind your father's success. And the maintenance uniform? I like seeing my buildings from the ground level. I like knowing what needs fixing before my property managers report it. And honestly, I smiled. I like that it keeps me humble. Reminds me where I came from. Michael rubbed his face. Amanda wants to talk to you. Her mother too, Thomas. He shook his head. Thomas has locked himself in his study. Won't come out. Won't talk to anyone. And you? What do you want? I want to marry Amanda. I love her. But I need to know she can separate herself from her father's expectations. Can you understand that? I understood better than he knew. Amanda and Margaret came by that evening. Amanda's eyes were red from crying. Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. If I'd known. You would have told your father, and then what? He would have treated me better because of my money? That's worse, Amanda. That means he still values people by their wealth, just in the opposite direction. He's humiliated. His partners know. His friends know. Everyone's talking about how he insulted a man worth hundreds of millions. Good. Maybe it will teach him something. Margaret spoke up. Robert, I want you to know I had no idea about Thomas's speech. If I'd known he planned to say those things, you would have stopped him? I would have tried. Margaret, you seem like a good woman, but you've enabled Thomas's behavior for years. His arrogance didn't appear overnight. Every time you smoothed things over, made excuses, helped him avoid consequences, you taught him he could get away with it. She looked away, but nodded. I turned back to Amanda. Here's my question for you. Not about your father, about you. When you introduced Michael to your family, did you believe he was good enough for you? Yes. Absolutely. Then why didn't you defend him when your father questioned his worth? She had no answer. That's what Michael needs to know. When life gets hard, and it will you stand beside him? Or will you always be looking over your shoulder at what your father thinks? I'll stand beside him, she said firmly. I promise. Then prove it. Not to me, to him. They left. I sat in the quiet of my house, surrounded by Patricia's paintings and our simple furniture, and thought about legacy. Real legacy. The kind you can't put a price on. Michael called me the next morning. Amanda broke her engagement. My heart sank. Son, I didn't mean... No, wait. She broke it temporarily. She told me she needs 3 months. 3 months to separate from her father's influence, to figure out who she is outside of his expectations. She got her own apartment, started therapy, even took a break from the family business. That's brave. She said you inspired her. Said if you could build an empire while staying humble, she could learn to be her own person while staying compassionate. 3 months later, Michael and Amanda got engaged again. This time, at my house, in my backyard, with just the 3 of us present. Amanda's ring was her grandmother's, not some expensive new purchase. Simple, meaningful, real. Thomas didn't attend their wedding 6 months later. His choice. Margaret came, though, and she cried during the vows. Happy tears, she said. Tears of relief that her daughter had found real love. The ceremony was at a small community center in Rainier Valley. Nothing fancy. I walked Amanda down the aisle she'd asked me to, said her father had forfeited that honor. Afterward, we had dinner at a Vietnamese restaurant, my mother's favorite place. 50 people, family and real friends, no pretense. Michael and Amanda bought a modest house in Beacon Hill. Not Madison Park, not $2,008,000, a fixer-upper that they're renovating themselves. Michael comes over some Saturdays, and we work on it together. I teach him what I know about home repair, about building things that last. Amanda works at a nonprofit now, using her business degree to help immigrant families find affordable housing. She's good at it. She told me once that she finally understands what her father never did, that the best use of privilege is opening doors for others. As for Thomas, I heard he retired from his law firm. Graham Straighton told me it was voluntary, but we both knew what that meant. The story of the engagement party had spread throughout Seattle's professional community. Nobody wanted to work with someone who'd publicly humiliated themselves by insulting a man based on appearances. I never sought revenge. I didn't have to. Thomas destroyed his own reputation through arrogance and assumption. All I did was reveal the truth. Looking back, I understand why Patricia wanted to raise Michael the way we did. She died when he was 15, but her wisdom shaped every choice I made after. "Don't let money define you," she'd say. "Let character speak instead." I think about her often, especially when I'm walking through my buildings in that old maintenance uniform. People still assume I'm the janitor. They talk freely around me, treat me like furniture, reveal their true selves, and I'm grateful for it. Because it reminds me that most people judge books by their covers, and that the most valuable things in life are often disguised as ordinary. Michael and Amanda are expecting their first child in November. A girl. They're naming her Patricia. When they told me, I cried for the first time since the funeral. Happy tears. Relief tears. The kind that come when you realize that despite all your mistakes, all your doubts, you somehow managed to pass down what mattered most. Not buildings or money or property deeds, but integrity, humility, the understanding that a person's worth has nothing to do with their title or their bank account, and everything to do with how they treat the world when nobody's keeping score. That's the real legacy. That's what endures, and no amount of money can buy it.